I have no parents. My father was gone since I was born. My mom, a pastry chef, died in a car accident 3 years ago. As an only child, I was given a pendant that my mom had kept as a keepsake. It was a small pendant with a cute cake motif. I still wear the pendant every day. My mom had never told me the story behind this pendant. Was it a gift from my father? There is no way I can find out their answer now. One morning, I rode my bicycle with my 2-year-old son, dropped him off at the daycare, and then went to work. Bye, Mommy, be a good boy. I am divorced and live with my son, Noah. My ex-husband and I divorced during the domestic violence. He had fallen behind on his child support payments. Another day to work hard for my son. Noah is very cute and a treasure to me. When I arrived at the office, there was a morning meeting. Well, I'm afraid I have very unfortunate announcement to make to all of you. The boss said in a serious tone. As a result, you will all be laid off at the end of next month. Wait, what's going on? That's too sudden. All of the employees began to speak at the same time. The word a layoff was weighing heavily on my mind. Why am I getting laid off? I have to raise my son. I have to find another job by the end of next month somehow. I immediately started looking for a job on the internet. Unseat a company that pays less than I make now is not good enough. I fear I needed to make enough money to pay for his college education, but I couldn't find a good job. Even if I passed the screening, I was always turned down at the interview. You have a child, and small children are likely to get sick easily. What will you do in such situations? In that case, I may have to leave early, or in some cases, take the day off. I see. The interviewer always had a sore expression on his face. Employees like that are disliked by every company. I went on numerous interviews and was turned down, which was more difficult than I had anticipated to find work for a woman with a 2-year-old child. A 2-year-old child. What if I couldn't find a job? I was at a loss. The word despair kept coming to my mind. At that time, I went to a business exhibition and came to a halt in front of a company's booth. I happened to notice some content on a screen. It was the same project I was in charge of. Of course, because the department will be eliminated, the project will be terminated as well. I was staring at the screen, thinking about how hard I had worked all this time. At that point, I was approached by a man who worked for the company.
Do you happen to work in the same industry as we do?
Yes, I am. But actually, I'm going to be laid off at the end of this month.
Is your Rosario apartment will be holding an entrance exam for mid-career hires next month. Errol, why don't you try it?
I appreciated it. I accepted the company brochure and left the booth. The company was well known. There would be a large number of applicants for the entrance exam. I was sure I would fail again. I sent my resume to the company, thinking that I would fail again. I sent in my resume, which passed the screening process, and much to my surprise, got me through to the final interview. I had already been laid off by my previous employer and was out of work. I was working as a day laborer part-time and living off of my meager savings. If I missed this chance, there was no way out. As is customary, I spoke to my mom in the photograph on the morning of the interview. Mom, I have an important interview today. Please watch over me, I said to my mom in heaven before taking my son into my arms. I have an important interview today. Please wish me luck, I said. My son's lisping words made me feel better. Thank you, Noah, I replied. I wrapped my arms around my son and rubbed my cheek against his. When I arrived at the interview room, there were about 10 people there. Out of all of us, only 2 will be chosen. I nervously waited my turn. My name was called after a while. I went into the room where the interview was to take place. The 2 interviewers were the man who approached me at the exhibition and the 40-year-old woman. But for some reason, the woman's gaze was drawn to the pendant on my chest rather than my face. I thought so and regretted a little. I had worn it as a good luck charm because it was my mom's memento. What if I'd fallen off because of this pendant? Much anxiety welled up in my heart, but it was too late. Following that, I was asked a series of questions and the interview appeared to go off without any problems. Finally, the female interviewer asked me, "May I ask, where did you get that pendant?" I was taken aback. This is a memento of my late mother. When I answered, the woman looked sad for a moment. Your mother's name was Susan, right? Her words startled me. Yes, do you know my mother? Yes, I am an old acquaintance of hers. I see, she passed away, she said as if mumbling. She then resumed her colloquial tone as if she had regained her composure. That concludes the interview. Thank you very much for your time. We will contact you later with the results. The next day, Saturday, I was at home when I received a phone call from her, the interviewer. Is it okay if I come to your house? Of course I accepted it. A short time later, she arrived at my house. I apologize for dropping by so unexpectedly, she said and held out a box of cakes. Here's some cakes for your mother. Thank you very much. I took the cake out of the box, placed it on a plate, and brought a photograph of my mom.
The female interviewer looked at the photograph and closed her eyes.
Meanwhile, I went to make some tea and set the rest of the cake on a plate on the table.
She turned to me after a while, bowed her head, and said, "Your mother was very kind to me before she died."
What was your relationship with my mom?
I met Susan when I was 12 years old. That was almost 30 years ago. My mom had cancer. I didn't have a father. Because my mom's days were numbered, I went to the cake shop where Susan worked to buy her favorite cake for her birthday. But the money I had saved from my allowance
wasn't enough. What I wanted was a whole fancy cake. I decided to make my own cake, so I went to the cake shop almost every day. The shop had a glass wall kitchen where I could see how the cakes were made from the outside. I considered imitating what I saw by watching how they made cakes. But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't figure out how to make a cake. When I was at a loss, Susan came out of the kitchen and approached me.
You come here every day to watch. Do you want to learn how to make cakes?
I wanted to give my mom a cake as a gift because it's going to be her last birthday party, but I didn't have enough money, so I decided to make it myself. But even though I came to watch it many times, I couldn't remember how to make it.
Oh, I see. I'm sorry to hear that about your mother. Then you don't need to pay me.
I won't make you a cake for free. What? For nothing? But my mom always tells me not to bother the people around me.
All right, then let's do it together.
I'll have to charge you for the ingredients, so it won't be free, will it? Are you sure you don't mind? I really appreciate what you did for me. You know, my mom loved the cake, and I'm so glad I asked you to teach me how to make it. I also made this for you to show my appreciation. I'm really good at making accessories, and I gave Susan a pendant that I made myself. Susan was very happy. That is the pendant you are wearing now. As I listened to her story, I unconsciously clutched the pendant to my chest. Then she continued her story. I was taken in by relatives and moved far away, so I never saw Susan again. But I never expected to meet her daughter there. What a coincidence, don't you think? She smiled and said, I did not know what to say. Then she took out a photograph from her bag. This is a picture of my mom. There was a skinny woman and a girl sitting around a fancy cake. The woman looked happy and had a very nice smile. Thanks to Susan, I was able to have a good memory with my mom at the end. I'm extremely grateful to Susan. I've never forgotten her in all my life. Now it's my turn to repay her kindness. We'd like to hire you. Your career is excellent and flawless. We will promise to support you when your child is sick, and you may even take the day off. I took her hand and shook it firmly. Thank you very much. I will do everything I can to assist the company. I felt very strange. I was very happy and relieved that I had found work, and I was moved by my mom's kindness to a young girl 30 years earlier. I felt respect for my mom and gratitude to fate for bringing us together. I cried a little, feeling a mixture of emotions. Then my son asked me, "What's wrong, Mommy?" He walked up to me and patted my head. "Don't cry." He comforted me, and I couldn't stop crying more and more. You know, Mommy is crying because she's happy. I hugged my son and told him so. Following that, I was rehired at her company and given a very rewarding job that made use of knowledge and experience I had gained thus far. My salary had also increased from the previous company. Now I can save money for Noah's school fees. And I informed her, "Thank you, Mom, for always watching over me." At that point, Noah approached me and said to the photograph of my mom, "Please take good care of Mommy." "I'll do my best too." "Oh, that's very encouraging." I tightly hugged my son's soft body. Quietly, I repeatedly told her, "Now that we're a family, you don't have to treat me like a stranger." But she continued to treat me like a stranger. I invited my sister to a shopping mall on a day when I had a day off from college and my part-time job. We borrowed my father's car and drove together to a newly opened shopping mall. I was excited because I had never been there before and was curious about it. I was hoping that by going to newly opened stores, my sister would find something she would like as well. I knew that if she looked through all of the beautiful stores, she'd find something she'd like. But she just kept walking forward. So I went into a clothing store that piqued my interest. After all, she is a girl, so I expected her to be pleased to see some cute clothes. I chose and coordinated a few outfits for her and let her try them on. I complimented her after she finished trying on the clothes. "How cute! They look great on you." She was silent and expressionless, but she appeared to be smiling slightly. I could tell my sister was happy because she was in a better mood than usual. So I bought them for her as a gift. We began hanging out together every time I had a day off after that. We visited parks, zoos, and aquariums that my sister had never visited before. I'd go to the mall occasionally and I picked out clothes for her. As I spent more time with my sister in this manner, her expression softened. She started calling me sis. To be honest, juggling college and a part-time job had been difficult for me. But for some reason, working part-time was not difficult for me because I wanted to help my younger sister. I felt content to make my sister happy, even if it was only a little. 5 years later, at the age of 25, I started working full-time. My younger sister was 15 years old and a senior in high school. She also started working part-time, so we've spent less time together than before. However, we did go out on occasion when we had days off together. One day, my sister asked me out for the first time. I was so excited that I canceled my date with my boyfriend and went to see her. We hadn't been to the shopping mall where we used to go in a long time. Since I hadn't been there in a while, there were new stores and many other changes. I was looking around at the new surroundings when I heard an unexpected word from my sister. "Could I pick out some outfits for you today?" My eyes welled up with tears, and I was moved by her words, but I tried to hide them with a smile. "Oh, really? I'm so happy. They'll leave it to you then," I replied. My sister was as calm as usual, and despite the fact that her expression didn't change much, she did appear to be excited. She led me into a clothing store. It was a new store that I had never heard of. Then my sister said, "Please wait a moment." So I was looking around at the clothes in that store when my sister returned a few minutes later with the clothes. That was quick, I thought, but without saying anything, I took my sister's clothes and went to the fitting room to change. My eyes welled up again as I changed because I was so happy to be wearing the clothes my sister had chosen for me. After I finished changing, I opened the fitting room curtains and showed myself to my sister. Then I heard unexpected words from her that she had never said since we met. "How pretty." My sister smiled as she said that. Just hearing those words, I froze for about 5 seconds. As from the bottom of my heart, I was overjoyed to hear those words from her. But when I suddenly came back to myself, I felt somewhat embarrassed. "Oh, thanks." I tried to hide my tears and embarrassment as I responded.
What do you say? Do you like them?
I smiled and said, "Of course I do. I'm so happy. I'll take these. Thank you." I then took the clothes and proceeded to the checkout.
Wait a minute, please. Please allow me to pay for them today.
But for a brief moment, I had no idea what those unexpected words meant. But after further consideration, I realized that many things made sense. My sister had recently started working part-time, and while I was usually the one who chose the store, she chose this one today. And my sister was quick to pick outfits. I realized my sister had planned ahead of time to buy clothes for me. I was already so happy that I resisted the urge to cry. I pretended to be fine and spoke in a normal tone. "In that case, I'll let you pay for them today." I handed my clothes to my sister. The quiet sister smiled slightly and happily and went to the checkout. Seeing her back, tears welled up in my eyes. Years passed in the blink of an eye, and I was 28 years old. My youngest sister turned 18, and was graduating from high school. I asked her what she was going to do, and she told me she was going to get a job. I advised her to attend college because she was intelligent, had good grades, but she refused. You all took excellent care of me, so if I want to go to college, I want to pay for it myself. Besides, I don't think I want to go to college at the moment. That was her opinion. I thought she was wasting her talent. I decided to honor my sister's wishes and look after her. And to my surprise, she got a job at a well-known company in town. The whole family was overjoyed to hear that. A few months later, my sister left my parents' house. I was almost in tears on the day of her departure, but that didn't mean I wouldn't see her again. I sent her off with a smile and promised to contact her on occasion. 7 years later, I turned 35. My sister was 25. We kept in touch every week, but she only came home once a year. My sister's only contact with me every week was always about how much fun she was having. It was a little disappointing that she only came back once a year. But I really wanted her to have a good life, so that's what kept me going every day. Then one day, I received a surprise report from my sister that she was getting married. I was surprised because she had never mentioned her boyfriend to me, but I was overjoyed. Actually, she had made the decision to marry quite some time before and had informed our parents of it, but she had told them she wanted to tell me personally, so they had remained silent. But she was too shy and nervous to tell me. It was very typical of her, and I thought it was very cute. The wedding date had already been set, and it was a month away. I thought it was too soon, but I was too happy to care. At 1 month later, the wedding day arrived. During this month, I met her husband, prepared her dress, and was very busy. I was overjoyed that they were able to hold their wedding without incident. My sister looked really beautiful in her pure white dress. The wedding went smoothly and the speeches of the bride and groom began. The groom's speech was surprisingly brief, but the content was so moving that some people were moved to tears. Then it was my sister's turn. I was anticipating what she would say. Was she going to talk about her husband's episode or our parents? After greeting and thanking both parents, my bride, my sister opened her mouth. My sister, she began to talk about the first time we met. At first, all she felt was fear. Fear that she would be bullied or beaten up again because she was an orphan. She said I didn't do anything but treat her nicely, but she couldn't open her heart to me. She didn't know what to do the first time we went to a shopping mall because it was so bright and shiny, so she just walked straight ahead. She also mentioned how happy she was when I dressed her in cute clothes for the first time and took her to various places. She gradually grew to enjoy them as she was talking about these things. Tears were streaming down her eyes. I had never seen my sister cry before, and I was so moved that I couldn't stop the tears from falling from my own eyes. And my sister said to me, "You are truly irreplaceable in my life. I owe you a great deal. So I want you to be happy as well. Appreciate everything you've done for me." She gave me a big smile, which she had never given me before. I was overjoyed to see her smile, and it gave me complete peace of mind. What I've done was not in vain. Despite the fact that my sister had endured a difficult life for a long time, Her smile convinced me that she would be happy from now on because she had met her husband. I will never forget her smile on this day. I'll try to be happy so that I can keep protecting my sister's smile and fulfilling her wishes. My parents were killed in an accident when I was 3 years old. My aunt, my mother's sister, was the sole living member of my family at the time. I did not have any grandparents. At the time, my aunt was a Korean lady who was in her 50s. String 2 edited. You're not required to push yourself to attend an excellent school. Playing is what kids do best. My aunt was worried, but I wanted to please her, so I decided to give it a shot. She lavishly complimented me when I was admitted to the city's best junior high school. I continued to make it a habit to study every day, even after I started junior high. Before I knew it, the occasional music break in the middle of my studies had become my one and only pastime. I eventually started to appreciate performing music as well as just listening to it. My aunt bought me a guitar for my 13th birthday, and I played it every day. Most of the time I played while my aunt was at work. When I was in 8th grade, I was playing the guitar in my room when my aunt entered. She had just returned from work. "What's going on?" She just said. "Excuse me?" I replied a little bluntly. Then my aunt said, "Mason, were you playing that?" I thought it was CD music. With her eyes wide open, she spoke. Although I was ecstatic to hear her say that, I was still a little embarrassed. Really, all I did was simply copy a song. I told her,
No, it's fantastic. You just got started not even a year ago. Oh, Mason, you're gifted. Goes, right? And then you're so talented. Oh, Bestow, you're so talented. Oh, no, Borsikan, so talented. You can tell, she said so excitedly. You're so talented, you could even go pro.
I'd always loved playing the guitar. It's not that I never considered pursuing a career as a performer, whether in a band or as a vocalist. But I knew only a few people succeeded, and realistically speaking, I had given up on the idea from the very beginning. So when my aunt told me that, I was so happy that I almost cried. If I told you I wanted to be a professional musician, what would you think? Anyways, I was aware even as a child that it would be difficult and an adult would only reject it further. But I wanted to consult my aunt because I figured she might understand.
Of course, I will support you. It's a wonderful dream. I believe you can fulfill your dream, Mason. Giving up on the dream you've discovered would be a shame.
And she smiled. And previously believed it would be difficult for me to become a professional musician, but my aunt's words gave me hope and encouragement. That's social technology. It was difficult for me to accomplish it alone. But after having someone support me, I understood how much courage one can master. I made the decision to enroll in music lessons. Prior to that, I had only ever copied the songs of other musicians. But after mastering the fundamentals, I felt more comfortable with my own playing. I acquired the ability to compose my own music and play with individuality. As my fascination with music grew, I tried my hand at both singing and playing the guitar. She always praised me highly wherever I performed for her or invited her to her concert. My dream of becoming a professional musician grew stronger. Despite the distance, I was admitted to a high school that had a music program. I kept up my commitment to music in high school and started a band with some of my friends. We played live shows frequently. I started writing songs and lyrics while playing guitar and singing. Not only my classmates, but also seniors and juniors became fans of our songs. We were having a lot of fun playing music. My Aunt Mason, aren't you really talented? And you practice hard every day. That's amazing, she told me. One day, as I was attending class, I was considering applying to a college with a music-related specialty. Unexpectedly, a different teacher from my class came and called me. I had no idea what was going on and went out into the hallway. Then I was informed that a coworker of my aunt's had called to say that she had fainted at work. I left school early right away and went to the hospital where I was instructed to go. I had never experienced anything like this, so I was really worried. She had been working so hard every day, so she must have collapsed from overwork or something. I had to explain to my aunt that she was getting older and needed to have a good rest. Thinking of this, I entered the lobby of the hospital. My aunt was sitting on the couch, looking different than usual, staring off into the distance. I was a little taken aback because I had never seen such a face from my aunt, who was generally so happy and upbeat. She didn't notice me at all when I approached her. "Oh, Mason, I'm sorry for making you leave school early. I was just telling my coworkers that it was no big deal and she didn't need to call you." "Let's go home," she said. She smiled as usual, but for some reason, I had the idea that she was uncomfortable. And even while we were heading home, she kept talking to me so much that I didn't have a chance to talk to her. She had a tendency to talk a lot, but she never paused to hear what I had to say. My aunt had a problem that day, and I knew it. When we arrived at home, I said, "You are not well today, so don't push yourself too hard. I'll cook dinner." But she asserted that she was all right, and she stood in the kitchen. I was not convinced by her behavior. It appeared as though she was trying to hide something. So I finally decided to ask her, "Why did you pass out today, Auntie?" My aunt didn't look back to see me. "I've already told you, because I was so exhausted. I simply became anemic. That's why they just gave me an IV and let me go," she replied. "So why is she not turning around to look at me?" I said, growing uneasy as I had a bad feeling about this. "Don't lie to me. Something is wrong with you today. I'm already 80 years old. I'm not a child." I said, "I've lived with you for a long time. I know you were lying. Say it to me," I said. She finally turned around and gave me a look after I said that. Her eyes started to flood up with tears, and I knew something was obviously wrong. "Yeah, you're right. I'm no longer a child anymore. We need to discuss this properly." After that, the time of silence felt very long. "I believe I have leukemia. It appears to be fairly advanced, and I have at most a year left to live."
Cancer of the blood is another name for leukemia, she said.
She seemed so healthy. But how could she have gotten it?
"I'm sorry, Mason. You were so lonely when your father and mother passed away, and now I'm leaving you alone." "I'm so sorry," she said, tears streaming down her face.
As my uneasiness turned to despair, Hearing my aunt's words, I nearly broke down in tears. I had never seen my aunt cry before, and I knew I had to be strong for her. I had to say something. You can't give up. Like please. When she heard me, she looked surprised and lifted her eyes to look at me. I've heard that some people have managed to beat leukemia. Doctors may make mistakes since they are also people. The life expectancy is just a prediction, and we have no idea what the future holds. You told me not to give up on my dreams, Auntie. Let's work together. Future time holds no certainties. Because there is even one chance that we can change it on our own, we must never give up. You're right, Mason. Let's do our best. As she brushed away her tears, my aunt finally gave me a glimpse of her genuine smile. Then she hugged me and thanked me. My aunt, who hugged me, was very slender, and I became aware that I was now more than 10 centimeters taller than her. My aunt, who has taken care of me since I was a youngster, used to look so big and dependable. But now I realized that she had really been working so hard with such a small body. I was filled with gratitude and the feeling that I should do something for her. I vowed to myself that I would make every effort. Thus, my aunt and I started our battle with leukemia. Despite having leukemia at the time of her diagnosis, she was able to move around normally and did not require hospitalization. She always appeared to be in a lot of pain, though, and the medication had a lot of negative effects. Don't neglect your studies, music, or your schoolwork. She made me promise that so I would go to school without missing a day and would rush home after classes were over. She was often telling me how much she wanted me to attend the College of Music, which was what I had originally planned to do. Even though my aunt seemed to be in a lot of pain, she told me, "It's time for you to study now, so don't worry about me." I was sometimes sent away to my room. Even under such circumstances, I took care of my aunt as much as I could. Even though initially I continued failing at cooking and housework, I eventually learned how to do both. I don't know if it was because of the disease or the side effects. However, my aunt, who used to gladly consume the food I prepared, she began to lose her appetite and eventually became nearly inedible. I did some internet research and started cooking meals that leukemia patients could eat. I never knew you could make such delicious dishes. Listen, you even had a talent for cooking. She complimented me. Furthermore, it was probably a good thing that I got sick, because if I hadn't, I wouldn't have found out that you had such tremendous talent. I was relieved that my aunt laughed like that and joked about her illness. Maybe she said this to comfort me. My aunt laughed every day, even when it was hard for her. Byzantinian severe period, now that she was able to stay at home even after a year had gone by, since she was told she had only a year to live, I started to wonder if laughing might have been significant. Even the doctors were surprised. A few months later, I was accepted into the music college of my dreams. I had to pass the exam, so I did my best with that in mind. I was quite anxious when my acceptance was announced, yet I was able to tell my aunt that I had passed with a smile. It was my aunt's 43rd birthday. 3 years have passed since she was diagnosed with leukemia. We celebrated her birthday together with a simple meal I had prepared and a cake from her favorite bakery. Then I said to my Aunt Annie, I have a present for you today. I took out my guitar. I played a song I had written for her for this occasion. My aunt listened to this song with a smile on her face and tears in her eyes. After listening to the song, my aunt cried and clapped. That was incredible. You wrote such a wonderful song for me, she said. How blessed I am to have such a fantastic song created for me, regardless of when I pass away. I have no regrets, she added. Don't say such a thing. You have to see me fulfill my dreams. Fulfill my dreams with that we both laughed. It was a heartfelt moment. I will never forget that day. Of you, Ease. Still, my father smiled and said, I'm sorry for being so bad at cooking. He was the kind of person who would say such a thing. The meal was not as delicious as it had been when my mother was living, and the house was a little messy. But I still had a happy childhood. After I started elementary school, I started doing household duties that I could, such as washing clothes and cleaning the bathroom. I started helping my father with household duties. One day, however, my father and I had a major change in our lives. It was the summer of my 6th grade year, and let's go out to dinner tomorrow, because I want you to meet someone, he told me. We dressed up a little and went to a restaurant. I was anxious about going to an elegant restaurant that I've never visited before, and the waiter escorted us to a seat. I could already see the back of a woman. It's when she saw my father and I had arrived. She rose up and turned around. Hey Emma, nice to meet you. She smiled at us. She was a late 20s woman, much younger than my father, who was about 40 years old. Her glossy black hair was coiled over her shoulders. She looked really nice and lovely in a modest long beigey one-piece dress. My father presented me to the woman who he said was named Harper. Both of them spoke about topics that made me feel at ease, and my worries quickly vanished. My father cleared his throat midway through the dinner and said to me, I'm thinking of marrying her. Even though I knew what he was going to say, I couldn't think of anything to say. It seemed like my father didn't realize it. I'm sure you will miss your mom, but from now on, Harper will be your stepmother, he said with a smiling face. Something he said didn't persuade me. Harper was friendly and attractive, and I admired her, but I wasn't sure if I could consider her as my mother. She prana. I'm not lonely, even if mom died. She will always be my only mother. I replied. I was depressed, and my father looked troubled.
Well, you don't have to think of me as your mother. But to only have one mother. So I hope you consider me a new friend you've made. Oh, just call me Harper, okay?
I was embarrassed, partially because I thought I had done something wrong to Harper. When I heard those words, I cautiously looked up. When I looked at Harper, I noticed her friendly smile. Okay, I nodded in response. After a few weeks, the three of us moved in together. From the time I was in the upper grades of elementary school, my father was a busy guy with business and did not return home until approximately 8 p.m. Although I had been used to this, I was really lonely. As Harper moved in with us, I was overjoyed to prepare dinner with her and chat with her while watching TV. Harper's upbeat and welcoming attitude made me feel at ease. We grew closer and closer till I felt comfortable speaking to her about my school issues. My 12th birthday was around 2 months after I moved in with Harper. My father left work early and came home that day. He celebrated with handmade food from Harper and a cake from my father. I was in a good mood after receiving the music player I wanted as a gift. My father, who was also in a good mood and a little tipsy, fell asleep while lying on the carpet. Harper and I found it funny that he didn't pay attention to our nagging. Then Harper said, "Emma, I have another gift for you." And she handed me a pure white box with a silver ribbon on it. I was overjoyed as I had not expected it at all. I immediately opened the box and discovered a lovely silver bracelet with a star motif on it. I was overjoyed to discover this lovely bracelet, which made me feel like an adult. "How cute! Thank you, Harper." When I said that to her, she replied, "I'm glad you liked it. You see, this is a matching item." And she showed me the bracelet with the moon motif that she was wearing. I adored it so much that I wanted to wear it every day, but I didn't want it to break or become damaged. As a result, I chose to wear it only on exceptional occasions and not on regular basis. I had it prominently placed on my study desk and looked at it every night. As much as I loved it, I also grew to love Harper. However, in the spring of my second year of junior high school, Harper's attitude changed drastically. I went to a fast food restaurant with my friends after school for a chat, and when I got home at about 6 p.m., Harper was at the entrance. "I'm home," I said, but she didn't even greet me. "What were you doing up until now? Your classes must have ended considerably earlier." I replied, "I was just chatting with my friends." I walked past Harper and was on my way to the living room when she stopped me. "The conversation isn't over yet. If you're going to hang out, you should come home from school and study for a little bit first," she said. In the end, I stopped swinging by on my way home from school to hang around. But that was not the only time Harper acted strictly. She started inspecting the bathtub I had cleansed, saying, "You didn't wash well." "Do it again." She tasted the food I cooked, saying, "This is overly salty and unpleasant." When I ironed my father's shirt, she examined it, saying, "There are still wrinkles on it." She would examine everything I did and criticized it. It's not like I've changed my ways. Harper has never said anything like that to me in the 2 years I lived with her. I was getting impatient and said to Harper, "Harper, why are you always so mean to me?" "Don't you like me?" I was expecting her to deny it and apologize to me. And I said that in the expectation that we'd make up tomorrow and everything would be fine. "And yet, I'm not sure." She said that. I froze in disbelief. "Don't you study if you have time to be mad at me all the time? Do you really believe you'll be able to become a teacher with your current grades?" She said this without making eye contact with me. That has nothing to do with this. Since I was in elementary school, my ambition has been to become a teacher, as Harper stated. Of course it does. You can't become a teacher if all you do is play. Harper was right. When I first started junior high school, I was dedicated to my studies. But by the fall of my first year, I was into hanging out with friends, watching TV and playing video games. Even when I sat at my desk, I couldn't focus. As a result, My grades were so poor that counting from the bottom of the ranking was faster. I was annoyed because she was right. But I don't have time to study because you forced me to do all of the housework, Harper. Then how can you complain when you're being taken care of? You should normally do something helpful here, Harper replied. I had nothing more to say to her. Every day, I became stressed about being with Harper. I spent more and more time in my room. I didn't want to look at the bracelet I had on my study desk, so I tucked it away inside the drawer. My father sensed something odd about me one day and came into my room to ask what was wrong. I assumed that if I informed him about Harper, he'd side with me, but Harper is as wonderful as your mother. You were only looking at the surface, he told me. I assumed he was the one who was only looking at the surface. He loves Harper as a woman, so he doesn't understand how badly she is treating me. Nobody at home will stand by me any longer. I'm all alone. At this thinking, I dashed out of my house into the train station, intending to visit a friend who lives in the next town. It was already past 11 o'clock. I had never been outside my house this late in the day before, so I was nervous about the change in the scenery from the daytime. There were drunken and noisy adults, as well as ladies in scanty costumes who worked in nightclubs. There were also touting guys with untidy hair and flashy outfits. I was tugged by the arm from behind as I swiftly walked by them. I looked back to see whether my father was following me, and there was a man I didn't recognize. I was terrified because he appeared so rough. Are you a junior high student, young lady? He said. Isn't it dangerous to stroll around here alone at this time? He spoke to me. I was going to my friend's house, so I am heading to the station, I told him. Then I'll walk you there, it's dangerous, he said, beginning to pull me by the arm. Bestia, I was afraid, but I figured it was fine if he walked me to the station. So I followed him. He did, however, gradually lead me to a lonely place. The train station is not this way, I said to him, but don't worry, it's okay, it's a shortcut. He continued to yank my arm and led me away. He wouldn't give up, no matter how hard I resisted. I was too scared to shout out. The man seemed to be heading far away from the station. I was afraid of a grown man's might, and I worried about what would happen to me. I regretted running away from home and wished that someone would save me. As tears streamed down my cheeks, I heard someone sprinting fast from behind me. Then the person slammed into the man in front of me with all his strength. Until the hit freed my arm, which was being tugged by the man's hand. At the same time, the person who struck the man grabbed my arm and dragged me back in the direction I had come. As I ran, I saw the person in front of me, and it was Harper. I'm curious why she saved me despite the fact that she must have despised me. I was wondering if she had followed me all the way here. I was scared, but thinking that made me kind of happy. They ran and arrived in front of my house, and when I was about to thank her for saving me, she scolded me. How stupid are you to go out alone at this time of night? If you can't even resist a man like that or protect yourself, you should plan ahead of time and act accordingly. Never do something so stupid again. Harper's face grew red, and she became angry instead of being nice to me. I had intended to flee since she was mean to me. I've attempted, I felt as if she had trampled on my feelings of gratitude, which made me even sadder. It was all my fault. I ran into the house, straight to my room, yelling. I buried my face in my bed and grieved as I reflected on the events of the day. I am still alone, whether I am outside or inside the house. After a few minutes, I heard my father yelling something from outside my room. I wiped my tears and exited the room to see what was up. But to my astonishment, Harper was lying on the floor in the doorway. What? What happened? How come Harper is lying there? When I looked at my father's face, I saw that he was crying while carrying Harper in his arms. I could only stand there dumbfounded, watching this sight, unable to understand what had happened. Harper's face was pale and unconscious in contrast to the angry and red expression she had previously. Shortly after, the ambulance called by my father arrived. "Emma, you are coming too." So we went to the hospital together. We were allowed to visit her once we arrived at the hospital, and I was astonished when I entered her room. Harper was connected to numerous tubes and appeared to be a different person than before. There were several doctors and nurses gathered in the hospital room. When Harper opened her eyes, a nurse said family members can speak with her. She urged me and my father over to Harper's side. Harper smiled weakly at me as she saw me approaching her. "What's the matter, Harper? Are you ill?" I had no idea what was going on.
You can't possibly stay up both this late. You're gonna have to go to bed early, get up early, and study hard.
There is no way I can sleep right now. It's difficult to study in this situation.
I will forgive you if you don't become a teacher, she told me.
I will, I replied. I was speechless for a moment after feeling Harper's icy touch on my hand.
I'm grateful to you too.
But that she took a small breath, and at the same time, a long beeping sound came from a nearby machine. Even a child like me could understand what that sound meant. Harper had passed away. Surprisingly, I did not cry after Harper died, and while I felt a sense of emptiness that she was no longer with us, I didn't know if I was sad or not. But I felt sorry for my father, who cried all through the funeral. 1 week after Harper's death, I was helping my father clean up the room and organize Harper's possessions. I felt both sadness and loneliness when organizing Harper's belongings. But frustrated by her coldness toward me, I began to complain to my father. I wondered if she suddenly became cold to me because she was sick. She started acting like a completely different person. After all, since we are not blood relatives, I suppose she was sick and tired of me by the time she died. When I said that, my father was silent at first. String 2 has been edited to have correct spelling and semantics based on String 1. The edited version is provided above in JSON format. The text has been corrected for capitalization, punctuation, and spelling errors, and it is also rearranged to match the semantics of String 1. Additionally, the editor added some missing words and added quote marks for the dialogues to enhance readability. Please note that there are some repetitions in the text, but the original text was preserved. It is up to you to decide if you want to remove any repetitions. I hope this helps. Let me know if you need further assistance. Next, AI Dungeon Assistant. Sure, This here is the edited version of String 2 with correct spelling and semantics, presented in valid JSON format. And to be honest, Harper told me not to tell you the truth, but with that, he began to talk. That was the first time I learned the truth. Harper was diagnosed with an incurable condition not long after I started junior high. No way. She had been sick for a year? Why didn't you tell me? But she was so active that she scolded me harshly. I had no idea what he meant, so I asked him. Harper had been considering what she could do for you since learning that she would die within a few years due to her illness. My father's surprising words made me stop sorting Harper's belongings. First and foremost, she decided to make you learn housework thoroughly so that you wouldn't get into trouble after she left. When I heard this, I recalled her making me do all the housework and how Harper double-checked and pointed out every small detail. She also wanted to do everything she could to support you and help you achieve your goals. I remembered Harper nagging me about studying hard and the words she uttered to me at the end. And she tried to make you hate her, so you wouldn't have to deal with the heartbreak of losing your mother twice. Hearing my father's words connected all the dots in my head. A take for the first time since Harper's death, tears were streaming down my cheeks. I could not hold back those tears. Everything Harper said and did that I felt was cold, horrible, and mean was actually her love for me. I was completely unaware of it. Harper had been bitter to me on purpose, hoping I wouldn't notice. I'd been with her for 2 years and knew she wasn't that kind of person. If only I had kept my cool and given it more thought. If only I had treated her nicely. I'm sure I would have understood what Harper wanted from me. Why didn't this occur to me while Harper was still alive? Even if I realized it right now, I would be unable to communicate my appreciation to Harper. These frustrations and regrets began to overflow in the forms of tears, and she asked me to give this to you too. He then handed me a box with a gorgeous night sky motif on it. A strange hollow appeared in the night sky, and right around it, a recognizable moon motif was inserted in the hollow part. I dashed back to my room, realizing what would fit in that empty void. I took out Harper's bracelet from the drawer and tried to fit the star motif into the hollow. Then I heard a click and lifted the lid to see a diamond pendant. When my father noticed my trembling when I saw it, he said it was locked so that it couldn't be opened, but she said you will be able to solve it. She stated it was a secret between you and her. She described it as a precious gift from her mother to her daughter. To be honest, she said she really wanted to give it to you when you were getting married. I used to think Harper despised me because I kept talking back to her. I realize now that she saw me as her important daughter. I couldn't do anything for Harper. I had no idea what I was doing, and all I could do was talk nonsense. As I sobbed, my father said to me, her greatest wish was for you to realize your dream and become happy. He patted me on the head. At day, my father and I couldn't stop talking about Harper. Despite the fact that it was summer vacation, I went to bed at 9 p.m. and studied in the morning. I didn't have any plans, but I wore the diamond pendant Harper had given me around my neck. Years have passed since then. I started working as an elementary school teacher. I haven't told my father yet, but I have a boyfriend who I'm thinking of marrying. If I get married someday, and if I have a daughter, I will absolutely give her the star-themed bracelet and diamond pendant that Harper gave me. I still treasure them. When I was 4 years old, my dad and mom divorced. At the time, we were living with my dad's grandmother, so my dad took me in. I was only 4 years old and had no idea what was going on. When I said to them, "Please don't argue," they stopped arguing right then and there. Too bad. It's because the sound of them arguing had awakened me up countless times. My mom took me to her parents' house on the day she was leaving. Suddenly, she spoke to me. Action, I remembered it vividly, since it had been a long time since we had gone out like that. Then we drove a little farther. We had a nice conversation in the car as usual. I realized how much I adored my mom. When I arrived at my mom's parents' house, I discovered a large amount of furniture and stuff. It was the same as when my aunt married 6 months ago. So it was like, oh wow, these are like real furniture and stuff. I said happily, "You are right." My mother said with a smile, but it was a fake smile that even I, a child, could understand. I was too young to understand the meaning of her smile. We stayed there for a few hours and then we went home. At the entrance, my mom told me that I had to go back to Grandma's house again. When I asked her when she was coming home, she was troubled and quiet for a moment. She replied maybe Sunday. I didn't doubt her words and sent her off with a smile and a wave. I had no idea when Sunday was at the time. I sat at the door for days asking my grandma when Sunday was. But my mom never came home. After several repetitions, I decided to question everyone around dinner time when everyone in the family except my mother was present. I said, "Who knows which Sunday mom will arrive home?" Even as a small kid, I could sense the atmosphere of the dining setting quickly froze as I said this. The smiles on their faces had vanished, and everyone was staring down in silence. I tried to change the atmosphere by saying I accidentally forgot to ask her which Sunday she was coming on. And I smiled. Then I wonder when it is. There are so many Sundays. My father said with a fake smile as he patted my head. A few years later, I was in the 6th grade. As you can imagine, by that time, I knew that my mom was no longer coming home. I asked my elementary school teacher what divorce meant. It's when your father and mother live separately. She explained it to me. I thought about asking her why they decided to live separately, but I had a mental image of my dad and mom arguing. I eventually stopped waiting for my mom at the door on Sundays and began living a normal life. Since that day, I try not to talk about my mom at home. But one day, I was out with my dad and grandmother. We were heading to a big department store. The route to the department store reminded me of the route I took to my mom's parents' house. I accidentally said such a thing. I was in a good mood since I was excited to go to the department store, and I didn't think I gave it much thought when I said that. A Torelli atmosphere in the car froze, and the comfortable vibe we had been in earlier vanished. No one spoke until we arrived at the department store, and the stillness persisted. Things returned to normal after arriving at the department store, but everyone still spoke a little. I hated this atmosphere. I knew it was my fault, but I preferred a joyful atmosphere. My dad and grandmother usually spoke so much that there was no room for me to speak. But that day, they didn't talk at all. Hey, I'm hungry. Sure, where do you want to eat? Though I want to eat a hamburger. And Sway, I saw a sign for a hamburger restaurant earlier, and it looked delicious. Surprisingly, the restaurant seemed to have been empty, and we were shown to our seats right away. Buksa as we were looking through the menu and deciding which hamburger to order, I soon realized that the two of them seemed to have lost some of their enthusiasm. The energy that had returned a short time before seemed to have vanished as well. I had no idea why. I decided, have you two decided yet? I asked them, and it seemed that they had already decided. They've already decided on regular hamburgers. I assumed that since we were at a hamburger restaurant, they should have ordered something out of the ordinary. But they had the right to choose. There was a little silence after we ordered the hamburgers I had picked and the hamburgers they had chosen. I began to think at the moment. I looked for the explanation why the atmosphere was frozen and why they were so depressed. Then I remembered one thing. A long time ago, my mom asked me, "What is your favorite food?" I didn't know much about the name of the food at the time. I said, "I don't know." After that, I asked my mother back, "What is your favorite food?" She said, "Hamburgers are my favorite food." I remembered her saying that. That had to be why the mood was so tense, even now. Then my hamburger arrived. But come to think of it, it's been a long time since I ate a hamburger. Oh, wait. No, have I ever eaten it? Maybe not, I muttered in my mind. I'd seen it in pictures and on TV, so I assumed I'd eaten it before. It was my first time eating a hamburger. Perhaps my dad had avoided eating hamburgers because they reminded him of my mom. As with this thought in mind, I took a bite. This tastes so good. I believed I was murmuring in my head, but it appeared that I was speaking it out. My father saw the look on my face and said, "Oh, I'm glad to hear that." He smiled. My hands never ceased moving to eat after that. I kept eating, saying how good it was, and before I knew it, I had finished it. Both my dad and grandmother appeared to have regained some of their optimism after that. After that, we wandered around the department store. After a while, I went into a clothing store. I was already in 6th grade and wanted to start caring about what I wore. I went into the fitting room, changed, and showed them the clothes I wanted to buy. Then they both looked surprised and said, "They look good on you. If you want to buy them, you can," Dad said with a fake smile again. I was curious, so I examined myself in the fitting room mirror. They appeared to be extremely similar to the clothes my mother used to wear. I changed into my clothes after closing the curtains in the dressing room. The drive home was silent, with little talk. In the car, I was thinking about many things. Why had my dad and mom divorced? My memories of my mom are fading fast. I thought I had been thoughtful to my dad and grandmother all day. Yet in my thoughts, there is still a shadow of my mom that appears at any time. Even though I tried to forget everything about my mom who abandoned me, I couldn't. There was a chance I'd never see her again, and there was nowhere I could say I missed her. I choked back the words "I miss" hears and buried them deep within my heart. I sat in the back seat of the car, crying quietly so that my dad and grandma, who were seated in front of me, wouldn't notice. Be 2002 phthalates. 2,000 years have passed since then. I am now married with a 1-year-old daughter and a 5-year-old son. After that, my grandmother told me the reason for the divorce. The reason was my mom's infidelity. It seemed it was only once, but my dad could not forgive her. But the relationship got worse and worse, and eventually they divorced. When I heard that, I began to resent my mother. She had the worst kind of affair, left without me, and never came to see me. I did not try to find my mom, nor did I think of inviting her to my wedding. But one day, my feelings changed. The other day, he asked me, "Hey, you gave birth to my sister and me, didn't you?" I replied, "Yeah, that's right. My grandmother gave birth to my dad, right? Then who gave birth to you?" I was a little confused there, but I answered firmly, your other grandmother, but I don't know where she is, so you can't see her. I wish I could meet her. Why? I had been speaking normally with him up until that point. I have to thank her for giving birth to you. That I was supposed to tell him that he was right, but before I could put it into words, I couldn't stop crying for a long time. I kept these words buried deep within my heart. They are words I've never said or thought since that moment in the car when I made a promise to myself. Since then, I've had moments when I've wished that my mom hadn't given birth to me if she couldn't raise me. There were times when I hated her, but I still had feelings for my mom. My son seemed to have broken the seal on my love for her. I hugged him, and I told him, yes, I miss her too.